June 25th, 1876. A day carved in blood and legend. The Battle of Little Bighorn, a decisive confrontation between the U.S. Army's 7th Cavalry and the united warriors of the Lakota, Cheyenne, and Arapaho. Amid the slaughter, few survived. Among them, Private John Ryan, a man who bore witness to the unimaginable. In this chilling first-hand testimony, Ryan recounts his desperate struggle to survive, revealing the battle's most brutal moments. Step into history as we experience Little Bighorn through the eyes of a soldier who escaped its fury. But before we begin, don't forget to like and subscribe to help grow our channel. As we advanced at speed, some packs came loose, forcing us to cut them free and leave them behind. One from my own company among them, likely seized by the enemy soon after. We moved into a ravine and made camp, though we kept our saddles on. We simply dropped to the ground, reins looped around our arms, and slept, a soldier's habit on the march. Meanwhile, General Custer and a few scouts rode ahead, gathering intelligence on the Indian position. When he returned, the officers assembled, and he issued orders for the battalion formations. We ate a rough breakfast, raw bacon, hardship, and creek water, yet devoured it eagerly. Here, Custer split the regiment into 3 battalions. His own command included Troop C, Captain Thomas W. Custer, his brother; Troop Y, Captain Miles Keogh; Troop F, Captain George W. Yates; Troop L, Lieutenant James Calhoun, his brother-in-law; and Troop E, Lieutenant Algernon E. Smith. Major Marcus Reno took charge of a 2nd battalion, Troop M, Captain Thomas French; Troop G, Lieutenant Donald McIntosh; and Troop A, Captain Miles Moylan. The 3rd, under Captain Frederick Benteen, comprised his own Troop H, Troop K, Lieutenant Edward Godfrey, and Troop D, Captain Thomas Weir. The pack train, 150 mules guarded by Captain Thomas McDougall's Troop B, plus detachments from the other companies under Lieutenant Edward Matthey, trailed Custer before later reinforcing Reno on the bluffs, a stroke of luck, as our ammunition was nearly gone. We crossed the divide and Lieutenant Hodgson, Reno's adjutant, rode down the line, ordering companies to spread out, preventing a dust cloud that might betray us. Beyond the ridge, we descended into a shallow valley, skirting the bluffs. Abandoned lodges stood with doors tied shut. We later learned General Crook's men had fought here days earlier, killing chiefs whose bodies were stored inside, though we didn't know it then. I believe Custer ready to charge, thinking it an active village. From our position, distant shapes flickered in the valley. Indians or buffalo, we couldn't tell. Here, Custer supposedly ordered Reno to pursue, pledging reinforcements, though I never heard the command myself. It was the last anyone saw of Custer's battalion until their corpses were found on the 27th. His force veered right. Reno's men followed the valley toward the Little Bighorn, while Benteen swung left. Reno's battalion pressed forward, first at a trot, then a gallop, riding 2 abreast. Lieutenant Varnum, a bold young officer leading the scouts, galloped ahead of Reno's battalion, swinging his hat and shouting, "30 days furlough to the man who takes the first scalp." We hungered for the leave, though the thought of claiming a scalp held little appeal. When we reached the Little Bighorn River, we plunged in, fighting a swift current and sinking into quicksand nearly waist deep. After a short pause on the far bank, where we dismounted, cinched our saddles tight, and climbed back on, we formed ranks. Captain French's Company M held the right flank, Lieutenant McIntosh's the left, and Captain Moylan's brought up the rear. In this order, we pushed down the valley, first at a trot, then a steady gallop. Thick underbrush and blueberry bushes crowded our right, so Captain French ordered me to pick 10 men and fan out as skirmishers, guarding the brush line to the riverbank, where hostiles might hide. We pressed forward another mile or 2 until dense timber loomed ahead. Just before reaching it, a single gunshot cracked in the distance. I couldn't tell if it came from Varnum's scouts or a warrior lying in wait. That lone shot signaled the start of the Battle of Little Bighorn, June 25th, 1876, and I remember its echo with perfect clarity. Then chaos. Private James Turley, one of my men, lost hold of his horse as we halted at the timberline. The animal bolted straight toward the Indian camp, carrying him to his death. I never laid eyes on him again. He was a good-natured lad. A small moment sticks with me. Back at Fort Rice, days before we marched out, Turley asked to stash some gear in my chest. I agreed, joking that if he died, his things were mine, and if I fell, he'd inherit mine. Fate, it seems, took the first claim. After the expedition, the belongings of the dead were auctioned off, their sale money sent to the paymaster's office. Once we reached the timber, we scrambled from our saddles, leaving every fourth man to hold the horses. The rest of us scrambled upslope, forming a skirmish line that arced from the trees toward the bluffs across the valley, facing downstream where the Indian village lay. From this position, we caught our first clear view of the encampment. Some men flattened themselves against the earth while others knelt, using prairie dog mounds as crude cover. Just as our line took shape, the warriors struck, a flood of 500 horsemen surging from the village. They came hard, riding good horses and carrying better weapons, trying to smash through our position. We met them with volley fire, knocking riders from their saddles. Lieutenant Hodgson moved down the line, steadying the men. "Keep cool, aim low." When their charge failed, the Indians wheeled away, then returned in a single file, clinging to the far sides of their ponies for cover. They began encircling us, flowing around our left flank and curling toward our rear. The order came to pull back to the horses. That's when we took our first loss. Sergeant Miles F. O'Hara of my Troop M. He'd only worn his sergeant's stripes a few days, replacing Sergeant John Dolan, whose enlistment was up. O'Hara was a soldier, and his death hit hard. Later, when we overran the Indian camp, we found a horror. 3 of our men's heads wired together on a lodgepole, hair singed off. Their bodies were never recovered, likely tossed in the river. Chaos erupted as we tried to remount. Men shouted, horses reared. Major Reno, bareheaded but for a red kerchief tied around his brow, bellowed the order, "Mount up!" Turning toward the river, I saw warriors closing the trap, slithering through the brush, flattened against their ponies' sides. I called to Captain French, "Sir, the enemy's in our rear." He dismissed it. "Nonsense, those are Custer's troopers." Private George Lawrence of my company took the bullet, entered his neck, tore out through his jaw. He pitched forward, dead before he hit the dirt. Then the storm broke, gunfire from every direction. I shouted to French, "Our only chance is to slash through them." We were rats in a bowl now, Indians holding the high ground. Major Reno galloped up, face wild under that red kerchief. "Every man who wants to live, follow me." The order to charge ripped through the ranks. We hit the embankment as one, Reno leading the desperate wedge straight into the enemy's teeth. Close quarters hell followed. Sabers flashed, revolvers barked point blank. Any man who fell from his saddle was finished, trampled or tomahawked. We punched through, wheeled left toward the bluffs, but the warriors swarmed like hornets. Their numbers didn't end. 30 men didn't make it, 10 from my Troop M alone. The roll call of the lost: Bloody Knife, Scout Chief; Charlie Reynolds, White Scout; Ijar Dorman, Negro interpreter. Lieutenant Hodgson went down wounded, his horse killed under him. Lieutenant Donald McIntosh of Company G, steady as a metronome in battle, stayed behind forever. Some splintered off in the chaos. Lieutenant DeRudio, Scout Fred Girard, and a dozen others vanished into brush, timber, or riverbank shadows. A few, like Sergeants Charles White and Patrick Kearney, later told me they'd stood chin-deep in the Little Bighorn, breathing through reeds until dark let them slink back to our lines on the bluff. The river at this point stretched 50 yards wide, its churning waters waist-deep, the current savage enough to sweep a man off his feet. Wounded and horseless, Lieutenant Hodgson begged for help crossing. They say Trumpeter Fisher, we called him Bounce in Company M, shouted, "Hold my stirrup," and dragged the lieutenant through the torrent. Then another bullet found Hodgson. He sank beneath the water, never to rise. 3 men later swore they'd been the last to touch his dying body. The fighting during that crossing was close enough to smell the enemy's breath, our men firing Colt revolvers point blank into warriors' chests. When cylinders emptied, soldiers flung their pistols aside rather than reload, snatching up carbines in desperation. I'll say this plain. Had Reno delayed retreating from that timber by 5 more minutes, not a man among us would have lived. We were outnumbered 10 warriors to every bluecoat. The far bank was a death trap, a near vertical climb up a buffalo trail barely wider than a man's shoulders. As we clawed up that bluff, the Indians picked us off. Dr. Dowolf, contract surgeon, Sergeant Clare, Company K, William D. Meyer, Company M. Farrier, Henry Gordon, another M Company man. Their corpses fell within our defensive perimeter, the only mercy being that the warriors couldn't reach them to mutilate the bodies. From the bluffs, we watched in horror as the plains below became a butcher's yard, Sioux and Cheyenne stripping uniforms, lifting scalps, and unhacking trophies from our dead. The burning prairie cast an eerie glow as officers shouted orders over the crackle of flames and the moans of wounded men. When the gunfire finally ceased, Benteen's battalion emerged like ghosts from the smoke, our first sight of them since the regiment had divided. Moments later, the pack train lumbered in with Company B under Captain McDougall, a godsend as our ammunition pouches hung nearly empty. We tended to our wounded as best we could. Field dressings torn from shirts, canteens pressed to blistered lips. Then Captain Weir, though I didn't witness it myself, reportedly took Company D toward Custer's last known position, only to turn back. Leaving 2 companies to guard the packs and wounded, Major Reno led 5 battered companies, what remained of them, toward the Indian camp following the path we believe Custer had taken. After half a mile, we reached a high ridge overlooking the valley. Through the smoke, shadowy figures darted like wolves a mile or more distant, warriors finishing off wounded troopers, as we later confirmed. Below us, the village swarmed with activity, a vast pony herd at its far end, war parties streaming back from the killing grounds. The Indians had fired the prairie to mask their movements, turning the land itself into a smoldering ally. Near the bluff's crest, we discovered a ford, Custer's first contact point with the enemy, evidenced by the corpses we'd find there days later. But now fresh warriors poured toward us from the direction of the gunfire we'd heard earlier. A sharp exchange cost us more men. Before orders came to retreat to the pack train, we worked frantically, dismounted under fire, nested wounded in a shallow depression, stacked mule packs as makeshift barricades, then formed a defensive ring with animals and skirmishers, bracing for the storm. The Indians struck fast, wave after wave, their charges breaking against our lines like water on rock. But they soon surrounded us completely. Gunfire became a continuous roar, so close we saw the feathers on their lances tremble with each shot. Then the killing blow. A gap opened on our right flank near a high ridge. One warrior, clever as the devil himself, slipped through and began picking us apart. Within minutes, the company beside mine lost half its men. The prairie wind carried their last cries as the noose tightened. We lay flat in the dirt when the first shot cracked, striking down the 4th man to my right. Before we could react, a second bullet found the 3rd man. The 3rd shot grazed my immediate neighbor, sending him crawling back to the wounded. I felt death's breath on my neck. In one desperate motion, Captain French and 6 of us sprang up. Abandoning frontal fire, we pivoted right as a single unit and let loose a volley that silenced the warrior's rifle forever. No more casualties came from that position. Captain French, a soldier's soldier. That day proved why French was legendary. Breech-loading .50 Springfield rifle, notched for every kill. Deadly accurate, claimed multiple warriors that afternoon. Comically bad at hunting birds, emptied his magazine at a curlew without a single hit. In his frustration, he hurled the rifle away. I later retrieved it, smuggled it to Fort Rice in an army wagon, and, when he discovered my theft, watched his face flush with equal parts anger and gratitude. Years later, I heard he died tragically after retirement, fate's cruel joke for a man who cheated death so often. As darkness fell, we transformed the bluff into a fortress with 2 spades, knives and tin cups, shattered hardtack boxes as improvised shovels. Our breastworks became a macabre collage, crates of moldy hard bread, sacks of rancid bacon, feed grain bags, blood-soaked blankets. Though ammunition and food reached us after midnight, thirst became our tormentor. The Little Bighorn glittered just 300 yards away. Yet those yards might as well have been miles with Sioux warriors guarding every approach. Men licked dew off rifle barrels, some drinking their own sweat. The night hummed with distant war chants and the moans of our wounded. Under cover of darkness, desperate men slithered toward the river. None returned unharmed. Some didn't return at all. Then at midnight, a lone trumpet's wail cut through the blackness. Cheers erupted. "Custer's coming!" But when our trumpeter's reply echoed unanswered, the awful truth settled. The Sioux were playing Custer's own bugle against us. That stolen trumpet, we'd later learn it came from a butchered trumpeter of Custer's, was but one horror in a night of terrors. Wounded men whimpered in our makeshift fortress as war ponies splashed across the river. The Sioux waiting for us to break. June 26th, dawn of the second hell. 2 gunshots cracked at first light. The Indians' opening gambit. Still no word of Custer. Then the warriors came in a screaming tide, focusing their fury on Captain Benteen's crumbling flank. "They're cutting through my lines," Benteen roared to Reno. "I can't hold." We ripped from our positions. Captain French's, Parker Springfield barking, to reinforce Benteen. The desperate charge hurled the Sioux back downhill, but cost us dearly. Had they broken through, Benteen would say later, we'd have shared Custer's fate. Amid the carnage, Private James Tanner lay bleeding on open ground. 4 of us bolted with a blanket under fire, bullets plucking at our coats as we dragged him to safety. He died minutes later, his blood soaking through the wool. Captain French's famed gray buffalo horse, the pride of Company M, took a bullet through the skull. As it stumbled blindly, Private Voigt moved to steady it, only to catch a round between the eyes. Come morning, we buried both men together, their headboard a hardtack crate scorched with their names by musket lead. The final shots, June 26th. Evening, as dust settled, the gunfire dwindled, save for a handful of precise shots ringing from a distant bluff where Custer was last seen. Each report was followed by the sickening thud of a bullet finding its mark. The warriors' weapons outranged our .45 Springfield carbines, their fire striking with terrifying accuracy. Captain French turned to me, his face streaked with powder burns. "Can you reach them with that cannon of yours?" I hefted my $100 Sharps Buffalo rifle, its 15-pound weight steady in my hands, the telescopic sight glinting in the fading light. After a few ranging shots, I loosed 6 rapid rounds. The warriors scattered like quail, abandoning their position to our cheers. The earth refused to yield all its dead. Lieutenants Harrington, Porter, and others remain missing, their bodies lost to the prairie or carried away. Many of the buried were nameless, their features too ravaged for identification. As the last Sioux disappeared over the horizon, we staggered from our rifle pits, horses still saddled since June 24th, their backs raw with sores. The lull brought frantic activity, dug deeper fortifications with broken sabers and bloody hands, led trembling mounts to water for the first time in 48 hours, built brush shelters. Reno's command casualties, 45 dead, between Valley Skirmish and Bluffs, 60 wounded, moaning in makeshift hospitals. My Company M, 14 killed, including 2nd Lautier's name, 10 wounded, 15 horses lost, June 27th, dawn of the rescuers. At first light, the abandoned village stood like a ghost city, only lodge poles remaining. Then a dust cloud appeared. Officers squinted through field glasses. Troops! Thank God, troops! Reno's scouts galloped out, returning with news. General Terry's column approached, having crossed Custer's battlefield. Their tally chilled us. 207 bodies left where they fell. Terry's men found Custer's butchered battalion, all dead, Reno's abandoned dead in the valley, the ravaged Indian camp still smoldering. When Terry's officers rode up, hardened veterans wept. We set to grim work. 1. Buried our Bluffs dead, shallow graves, no coffins. 2. Smashed 43 carbines, stocks broken, barrels glowing in bonfires. 3. Destroyed saddles, leather slashed, metal fittings buried. The horses suffered worst. We shot 21 wounded mounts, some men whispering apologies as they cocked pistols. My farrier wept while putting down Captain French's last surviving gelding. Terry's surgeons took our wounded, stripping their fouled uniforms before carrying them to camp. That night, the 7th Cavalry's band played Garrywin, but no one sang along. 5 companies of Reno's battered force advanced along the bluffs toward Custer's last stand. At the bluff's end stood a crude fortification. Evidence Custer tried crossing here to strike the village. The first of his dead lay scattered like broken dolls, their Springfield carbines empty, brass casings glittering in the sun. Earlier, when Benteen's battalion first reinforced Reno on the bluffs, these same 5 companies had attempted this same advance, only to be driven back by warriors swarming from the ravines. Now, with Terry's arrival, we moved unopposed through the killing ground. Curley's harrowing escape. The Crow Scout's survival defied all odds. 1. Shed his identity, washed off war paint, swapped his crow blanket for a Sioux 1-2, stole a pony, muzzled the animal's whinnies with his hands 3. Played dead, mimicked gunfire for Terry, then collapsed dramatically 4. Drew the truth, scattered leaves on paper. White men dead, Sioux thick as these. His story seemed madness until we saw the battlefield. Benteen's unsung valor. While Custer's fate dominated talk, Captain Benteen's deeds saved the living. Cleared murderous ravines of warriors with relentless charges. Opened the water route. His men dragged canteens through gunfire to the river, held the crumbling line, 3 times repelled flanking attacks. Where Custer had divided his force, Benteen consolidated. Where others faltered, he stood like iron. The surviving wounded owed him their last sips of muddy river water. As we buried Custer's men, the horror came into focus. 207 bodies in twisted death poses, many mutilated beyond recognition. Empty cartridge piles marking last stands. A lone surviving horse, Comanche, Keogh's mount, bleeding from 7 wounds. Curley's leaves told the truth. The Sioux had vanished like summer storms, leaving behind only the stench of gunpowder and death. And Benteen? He sat quietly on a saddle blanket, writing letters to the families of men who'd laughed at his caution 3 days prior. In the hellish chaos of Reno's retreat, Captain Benteen emerged as the steadfast pillar of the battalion, his cool judgment and relentless courage turning certain annihilation into a fighting chance. Where panic threatened to take hold, Benteen's presence alone steadied men's hands. His tactical brilliance in securing the water route and anchoring the defense proved the difference between survival and massacre. Dr. Porter's Field Hospital. The surgeon's diary reveals harrowing moments. The run to the bluffs. Amidst bullets and war cries, Porter saw Lieutenant Mathey perform a miracle, transforming dead mules and hardtack boxes into a life-saving barricade within minutes. The overflowing wounded. His triage area swelled from 10 to 52 men, the ground slick with blood as Fred Gerard, a scout with surgeon skills, helped perform emergency amputations with a butcher's knife and bone saw. The medical toll. With Dr. Lord dead with Custer and Dr. Dywolf bleeding out on the hillside, Porter and Gerard became the last hope for dozens. A legacy written in blood. This account peels back the Hollywood myth to show the real heroes of Little Bighorn. Benteen's unbreakable defense, Mathey's improvised fortress, Porter and Gerard's battlefield surgery. Their actions, not Custer's doomed charge, define what true courage looks like when death surrounds you. Want more untold stories? If you found this eyewitness perspective revealing, smash that like and subscribe button. Your support helps us resurrect more forgotten voices from history. Which battle should we cover next? The Alamo? Gettysburg? Comment below. History isn't about dates and dead generals. It's about the sergeant who held the line, the medic who worked through the night, and the scout who outsmarted death itself.